The, the next speaker is Jungmyon Francis Lee. The topic of the presentation is super tall buildings in Korea. Mr. Lee is president and CEO of Baum Architects. He was designated as a commissioner of the Presidential Commission on Architecture Policy of the Korea. He is in the forefront of the Korean Architects Society to take the right track of the BIM and green energy design. Please.
Unfortunately, I'm the only one Korean speaker, which means I'm the English is not my mother tongue. So please excuse my bad pronunciation if there's any. But however, the Korean attendee here may understand my English much better. Today, I'm very honored to be here to present some history about the high-rise building in Korea. And it started with the Lotte Busan Tower back in 1994. So I think the Korean version of super tall building history will begin with my firm, Baum Architects. I'm very proud of the career, and I want to thank the client who gave the opportunity to us. The project location is historical old CBD in Busan metropolitan city, facing the South Sea and Busan Harbor, which is the gateway of Northeast Asia. It was launched in 1994 as the city decided to develop the old town in Busan, especially after they moved the city hall, which became the site of this project. The project was designed as 465 meter tall, with 107 stories tower for 2 hotels with observatory on top of the building, with theme park, and 2 blocks of podium for convention center and department store. We started this great project with passion. However, there was not enough information, either guidelines set up. At the time, even the Wikipedia was not born. So there was no way we can get the information about the high-rise building at the time. With huge amount of effort, we complete the DD phase with the local engineers. I think it was possible because of the friendly support by foreign engineers like SWMB. Now they changed the name to MKA. And it is really was a very valuable challenge for Korean architects and engineers. During the building permit process, which lasted for 4 years, we had quite an amount of hardships. It was mainly because of the local building code and regulations, which didn't define the super tall building requirements. There was almost no regulations, either guideline, which may adapt the requirements of this super tall building at the time, as I said. However, the building permit was granted. It was the very first time in Korea with more than 100 stories, and it was the first one. The date was 11th of November, 2000. Some of the attendees here may recognize the date, 11th of November. It was the same date when we got the building permit for the Jamsil Lotte World Tower, the topic project of this session. So it's really a very interesting coincidence. And especially the Korean attendee here may recognize the date as Pepero Day. So now I'm holding this. From 11/11, we Koreans call the date as Pepero Day, and actually this famous cookie is from the Lotte Confectionery Company. So I think it's very amazing coincidence. I believe all the trial and errors we underwent served as the foundation to improve the Korean building code as well as the general confidence on tall buildings in Korea. Now, the department store of this project has opened for business since December 2009. And currently, the tower scheme has changed its shape for the 5th time with fourth design architect on board and its physical location to the reclaimed land from the sea. Now, I'm about to introduce some major updates of Korean building code along with the issues raised during the first building permit process and the last 10 years improvement in Korea. The first issue. The old building code required the egress stairs to be connected directly from top to the ground level. As you may see in the left diagram here, the egress stairs of the Busan Lotte Tower has to be continuous to conform the code requirement until the code was revised later. As more information was gathered and the understanding of key issues in super tall buildings was improved, they allowed a partition wall in the staircase to prevent the stack effect as shown on the right. Kind of some ridiculous case. However, it was difficult to maintain the effective width for egress over the narrow landing, as you may guess. And moreover, the stair doors would not open easily due to the air pressure difference on each side of partition wall. Now it's totally changed, so we don't need this anymore. Second issue, there was no refugee area requirement at that time. Now we all know that it's almost impossible to escape down to the egress level directly in case of emergency. For this realistic reason, as shown in the middle, refugee areas were provided later on the third scheme of this project, finally. And the safety issues have been raised and discussed on the super tall buildings as several super tall projects was planned in Korea. In 2009, Korean building code was revised. It contains the definition of the super tall building, and the installation of the refugee area became mandatory item. In Jamsil Lotte World Tower, shown on the right, refugee areas are provided with egress stairs connected directly to the area, and the egress stair shafts are discontinued, preventing stack effect. Third issue, there should be huge chaos and panic if all the occupants are to use the stair only in case of emergency. This is the reason to consider the lifeboat running down to refugee floors as the essential safety element. There was no understanding of the essential need for the lifeboat at the time. The only requirement was specially equipped fireman's elevators when we are trying to get the first building permit. During the total revision of the project with new foreign design architects hired by the client, we took the chance of improving the safety of this project. So, the emergency elevator for the firemen was allowed to be used as the lifeboat at that time. It was an exceptional variance for this special project from the government. As shown in the right diagram, firemen's elevators, and lifeboat were designed separately in the Jamsil Lotte World Tower based on the new guidelines for super tall buildings of Seoul metropolitan city. Lifeboats are to run between each refugee floor to evacuation floor directly, as you see here. Fourth issue. Based on the old building code, a lot of the Korean attendees here may remember, all the vertical transportation should reach to the main egress floor. Yes, maybe tens of elevator shafts might fill the ground floor, leaving almost no area even for the entrance lobby. So the total number of elevators was the only requirement at the time. So we appealed the need of new calculation method based on the use and occupancy of each space. In other words, performance-based calculation, and thankfully, it was granted at the time. Otherwise, this project should have disappeared entirely, and I won't be here in front of you today. Since then, Korean building code regarding vertical transportation system in super tall building has been mitigated to allow performance-based design. This year, the city of Seoul set up the specific guideline for the vertical transportation system in super tall buildings. Fifth issue. The controversial heliport was mandatory item for the buildings over 11 stories and certain size at that point. As shown here, as shown on the above, all Korean tall buildings were designed to accommodate the heliport on top, while the cases in other countries were free from the shape of building and providing various outstanding symbolic shapes. During the building permit process of Busan Lotte Tower, we had appealed seriously, and now, thanks to the building officials who understood the value of design and who finally recognized the high risk of landing the helicopter on that high height, heliport is not mandatory anymore. So we are free from that kind of shape. And last, one more issue. By designing the super tall building, it is my understanding that we, architects, are proposing a multiplex city to the public and to the citizen and to the neighbor and to the town. I think I'm right. The preliminary scheme of Busan Lotte Tower was to accommodate multiplex city function on the site, and we proposed three-dimensional circulations to improve the accessibility and the surroundings. However, this dynamic three-dimensional pedestrian deck above the ground level are to be considered as building area, making the overall scheme to exceed the allowed building coverage ratio. As shown in the diagram, we had to step back to common two-dimensional circulation system to get the building permit, unfortunately. It is my opinion that we need to revise the regulation or provide more room for the variance to improve the safety and amenity for the pedestrians on the ground, especially when we are trying to build the high-rise building. We need to make much more effort to make the surroundings of the super tall buildings enjoyable, especially to reduce the overwhelming impact on the pedestrians. That's what my long comrade James expressed before about the low part of the Jamsil case. Now, let's walk into the status progress, and it's my final talk for the super tall building project in Korea. As I stated before, The super tall building project in Korea was started with Busan Lotte Tower in 1994. It was 17 years ago. And more than 13 projects in Korea have been on the way since early 2000. Unfortunately, due to the global recession going on, most of them are in difficulty of financing, and lots of them are reducing in scale or are being canceled. While we are expecting a group of masterpieces in Yongsan site. Nevertheless, the Jamsil Lotte World Tower and the Global Business Center, which is the headquarters of Hyundai Motors Company, are making good progress toward the completion. And I am so proud of my firm and my members, and doing the major role for these two projects with my friend Jamie, KPF, on both gorgeous projects. I'm sure these two buildings will start the first page of super tall building history in Korea. And thank you for listening.
Jungmyon, thank you very much.